Okay guys, this is going to be Unit 1-1 Notes, which is Simplify Expressions, Day 1. And our first blank says it consists of variables, numbers, and operations with no equal sign. So this is going to be an expression. Okay, and it says no equal sign, so that's important that you understand that. These are called expressions, and you notice that they don't have an equal sign. If it did have one, then it would be called an equation. We're not talking about equations just yet. Okay, then it says blank terms whose variables and their exponents are the same. So like terms. And some examples of a like term would be, I'm going to split these in half. Okay, so some examples would be something like 2x, 5x, negative 11x. They all have the same variable. Remember, variable is a letter, any letter, and an exponent is the little number above the letter. So that little 2 up there, that would be an exponent. So a like term is a letter and exponent who are the same. So these are considered like terms because they all have the same letter and exponent, which is that they don't have an exponent written down. Okay, so that's all the same. Another example could be negative 3a squared. Could be a like term with 7a squared and or negative 2a squared. So on this one, they all have the same variable, same letter a, and they all have the same exponent 2. Okay? Some non-examples. So a non-example would be something with a different letter or different exponent. Okay, so this could be something like, let's see here, 5x and 6y. These are a non-example. They have two different letters. Another non-example could be, let's see, 7x squared and negative 4x cubed. Okay, this is a non-example because, yes, they have the same letter x, but they have different exponents. One's a 2 and one's a 3. So that means that these are not like terms. That's not what we're looking for. So these are what we are looking for. So the two most important things today is that you're able to recognize if they have the same letter and the same exponent. Okay, terms. These are all terms up here. Okay, all of these things separately is a term. 2x is a term. 5x is a term. Negative 11x is a term. Negative 3a squared is a term. These are all considered terms. And if you can look down here, all my terms are separated by a plus and minus sign. A plus and minus sign. And then this blank is simplify. And simplify means to rewrite an expression as simply as possible. Okay, so we're going to rewrite all of these as simply as possible. And I'll show you how we're going to do that. So to start the first one, first it's asking for the number of terms. Well, 7x is a term, negative 5 is a term, negative 3y is a term, negative 10x is a term, positive 8y is a term, and negative 8 is a term. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 terms. Okay, and I want to simplify. I want to simplify this as simply as possible. So I'm going to take it as 6 terms, and I'm going to see what's the fewest amount of terms that I can write over here by combining them, combining the like terms. So what I'm going to take is this 7x, and I'm going to put a box around it. And I'm going to ask myself, what is a like term with 7x? Well, 7x and 10x, they both have the same variable. They both have x. So I'm going to put a box around this, and I'm going to include the sign in front of it with it, okay? Now, I'm combining my like terms, so I'm actually going to be adding because combine means add. So in my calculator, I'm going to take 7 plus a negative 10. Let me see if I can darken this up just a little bit so you can see. There it is. So 7 plus negative 10, which would give me negative 3. So the first thing I'm going to write over here is negative 3. And the 7 has an x and the negative 10 has an x, so my answer's got to have an x. Okay? Then I'm going to take my next term, which is negative 5, and I'm going to put a circle around it. And I'm going to circle its like term. Well, negative 5 doesn't have a letter, a variable, or it doesn't have a little exponent. So the only other term that's like this is negative 8. And these are like terms, and I'm going to combine them. And because I'm combining, I'm going to add. So negative 5 plus negative 8, which gives me negative 13. And neither one of these have a letter with it, so it's just going to be negative 13 or minus 13. Same thing. Then I'm going to put a triangle around my next term, negative 3y, and its like term is a positive 8y. They had the exact same letter, and so I'm going to combine them, which is add. Oops. So negative 3 plus 8 gives me 5, and they both have a y, so I have to put a plus 5y. And this is my answer. How do I know that this is my answer? Because I cannot combine any of these. They all have different letters. Okay, next. The difference on this next problem is that I have parentheses. And we talked in class about how parentheses means multiply. And so I'm going to multiply the number that's out there on the outside of the parentheses. Well, there's not a number out here, so I'm going to pretend this is a 1. Okay? And I'm going to multiply. If I cover everything else up, I'm going to multiply this first. I got to get rid of the parentheses before I can combine my terms. Okay? So if I was to multiply, this is a positive 1, so positive 1 times negative 7, which gives me negative 7. Okay? So then I'm going to write right underneath it negative 7 x squared. I brought down the x squared. All right? And I'm going to bring down everything else that I have not used yet. And I'm going to count my number of terms because that's what it's asking for. So 1, 5x is 1, 3 is 2, 8x is 3, negative 7x is 4. So I've got 4 terms here. And now I'm ready to combine them because I do not have any more parentheses in my problem. So I'm going to put a box around my first term. And its like term, which is the same letter and exponent, is a x. This has the same letter, but it's got a different exponent. So those are not considered like terms. So I'm going to combine them, and I'm going to do 5 plus 8 in my calculator, which will give me 13. So 5 and 8 combined give me 13, and that's going to be 13x. Then I'm going to take my next term, and I'm going to put a circle around it, and I'm going to include the sign. So a plus 3. And the only other option is negative 7x squared. Well, these are not like terms. This has an x squared with it. 3 does not. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this plus 3, and I'm going to just put it on the back over here. Nothing changes because it does not have a like term. Then I'm going to put a triangle around my next term, a negative 7x squared. And it does not have a like term, so I'm just going to, again, write it on the back because it does not have a like term. Okay, the third problem.
Pardon the interruption. I have some bus.
Okay. All right. next problem. First, before I can combine, I got to get rid of my parentheses. And you guys know parentheses means multiply. So this is really a 1 out here. And when I multiply, I'm going to multiply -1 times -6. So in my calculator, -1 times -6, which will give me +6. So I'm going to write a +6 right underneath it. And I'm going to bring everything else down. -2x, and I got to have a symbol here, and that's going to be positive, plus 9y minus 3x minus 9y. And I'm going to start with my first term, and I'm going to put a box around my very first term, -2x. And I'm going to look for its like term, the exact same letter, which is -3x. And I'm going to combine, and because I'm combining, I'm going to add. -2 plus -3 gives me -5. And -5 needs an x. Then I'm going to circle my next term, which is 6, and it does not have a letter. And there's no other like terms with it. There's no other numbers that do not have a letter with it. So what I'm going to do with the 6 is I'm just going to go ahead and bring it over. And then last, I've got a +9y and a -9y. They both have a y, so they're like terms. I'm going to combine them. And in my calculator, I get 0. Okay? I'm left with 0 y's. If I have 0 y's, I'm not going to write anything because I have 0 of them. So this is my answer. Oh, and I forgot to write the number of terms here, which I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 terms. Sorry. Okay, for the fourth problem, I don't have any parentheses here, so I'm ready to go ahead and combine like terms. So I'm going to box my first number, 4xy. And the only other term that has xy is this +7xy. And I'm going to combine 4 plus 7 and get 11. So I'm going to write 11xy. Okay? Then I'm going to put a circle around my next term, -4xz. This does not have a like term, so I'm just going to go ahead and bring it over, -4xz. And then my last term, -11yz. Does not have a like term, so I'm going to just write it on the back. And this is my answer. Oh, I forgot to write the number of terms again. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 terms that I started with. Okay, last problem. I've got parentheses, so the first thing I need to do with these parentheses is multiply to get rid of it. Okay, so the number on the outside, there's not one. There's just a negative symbol on the outside. So I'm going to put a 1 here. And now, if I cover everything else up, it becomes -1 times -4. So, -1 times -4 in my calculator gives me +4. So I'm going to write +4 n squared n. Okay? And I'm going to bring everything else down. So 11 n squared. And that's going to be a plus sign right here. And I'm going to switch up the colors to maybe help you see this a little bit better. And then I've got a minus 3m squared n, a plus mn squared. Okay? And it's asking for how many terms do I have. Okay, so if I look, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 terms. All right, and I'm ready to combine them. So I'm going to put a box around my first term. 11mn squared. The only other mn squared is back here. They both are mn squared. And there's not a number here, so I say that's a 1. And I'm going to combine 11 and 1 and get 12mn squared. Then I'm going to circle my next term, m squared n, and it has a like term. And I'm going to combine 4 and negative 3, 4 plus negative 3, and get a positive 1. And I don't have to write the 1 in front, because we don't write 1 in front of variables. And I'm going to write m squared n. Positive m squared n, and that will be my answer. Okay guys, I hope this is helpful. If you need to rewatch it, go ahead and rewatch it. If you still have questions, you can always ask me in class. See you guys tomorrow.